So good morning, and we're in Los Angeles. It is the 18th day of Teves, and I believe it's the 11th of January, though I could be mistaken because we had to fly a long time to get here. So we're going to learn a little bit from Moshe Vishnevsky's Chumash, which is a work of art. It's the compilation pretty much of everything the Rebbe ever said about any verse, specifically the Rashi in every verse. So in today's Torah portion, we read about the beginning of Moses' revelation when he saw the vision of the burning bush. So he begins here with telling the story because Rashi brings this story. Actually, Rashi doesn't bring it, but the Rebbe does bring it, and he says like this: So God examined the behavior of Moses, who was tending the flocks of his father-in-law Jethro, who would later be known, now he was known Jether, and then he would later be known as Jethro, the deposed ruler of Midian, and concluded that he would be suitable as a redeemer. For example, how did he know that he would be suitable as a redeemer? So this is a story everybody knows, that there was a kid, a small goat or a sheep, that once ran away from the flock and reached a shady place near a pool of water where it stopped to drink. Moses ran after it, and when he caught up with it, said, "I did not know that you ran away because you were thirsty. You must be tired." So he carried the kid back to the flock, and God said, "Because you showed such mercy to a mortal man's flock, you are worthy of tending my flock Israel." Moses typically guided the flock far into the desert so they would not graze on other people's property, and on one occasion came to Mount Sinai where God would eventually give the Torah. This mountain was also known as Mount Horeb. So there's a few things about this, all these additions. This is all from the verse that says, just in English it would say, Moses was tending the flocks of his father-in-law Jethro, ruler of Midian, and he came to Mount Sinai where God was. That's all it says in English. And then he adds all this is either based on the Rashi or on the Rebbe's commentaries. So the thing is to think a little bit more about this story about the kid, because you can't take it at face value. Because there's something, if you've ever tended a flock, I don't know if anybody here has, but they don't do that. They never do that. Why do they not do that? Because if it's a small kid, they don't drink water. They only drink milk from their mother. So there's no such thing really. So how could it be that a kid would run away? So this is all the background for the story, that Moses suspended his judgment. He said this, meaning he couldn't. What do you mean? You don't understand that he ran to get water? That's a normal thing, but he couldn't imagine that because they don't do that. So what apparently happened? What apparently happened was either that his mother was dead, or so ill that she didn't have any milk. And Moses had missed that in some way, that he tended the flock very well, but he missed that about this particular sheep or goat. And so usually what happens is that even in these cases, so they'll go suckle from another parent, from another female goat or sheep. But in this case, apparently nobody gave him. And he needed to drink something, and he himself didn't know what he was looking for. This little kid doesn't even know what he's looking for. So he runs away to pursue and to find some water somewhere. So the Rebbe right away says about this story that this is the description of our children today. That our children today, it could be that the parents are ill, and they don't know how to give what the Rebbe used to call, and Rav Shtandlitz used to call this, a proper Jewish education. I always thought that having proper Jewish education meant I went to school and got angry at my teachers and didn't want to go to school. But it turns out that actually worked. I mean, as much as going to the religious school that I went to in Israel when I was growing up was something of a trauma, but still it worked. Why did it work? So it's hard to understand, but the fact that there was one male teacher who was very exceptional in my school, and his name was Nisim Dahan. He was a Yemenite guy. No, I think he was Moroccan. And he was the love of the school. Everybody loved him. He was a very, very special man. He wasn't a big scholar. He didn't know very much, but he was a father figure for everyone. And so when we grew up, and from 6th grade and on, we davened, we prayed in the morning with the older kids who already put tefillin on, so we got a chance to be with him. And to be scolded by him was so today I attribute that to why I turned out the way I did when I was younger, because I really loved this man. And we all wanted him to be our teacher in classes. But for my class, it didn't work out. It was because he could only take one class every year. So my class he missed. But being with him in davening, I remember that was the impression. That's all it takes. It takes one person that really has an impact on you, and then you're on derech hamelech, as we say. We all have hang-ups from childhood. I don't know of a person who doesn't. But in the end, you tend to forget the hang-ups. And you tend to remember the places where things were warm and good. And so I know them from the people that I grew up with who are now in our 50s, that it's almost like I can almost say where somebody is today based on his interaction with that teacher. Like I remember what the interactions were, and it's almost a sure indication of where they are today. So here again, it's this idea that you have to suspend judgment also. That when the child runs away, you have to understand that there's something missing. There is something missing. They don't run away for nothing. There is some reason for it. And so Moshe has a suspension of judgment. And this suspension of judgment, that he doesn't right away stop it. You have to understand, Moshe was such a good shepherd that he right away saw. It wasn't like, in the Midrash, when I grew up, it told that he ran away and Moshe had to chase after him. That's not the way Moses is in my mind. In my mind, he knew exactly where the kid was, and he watched, and he went and followed him to see where he was going. Because again, this was such erratic behavior, so you have to understand where he's going. Once you understand where he's going, you can begin to fix the situation. You can remedy it by giving them what they need, but in the right way. And sometimes to do that, you have to actually carry them back. That's also a possibility. So that's first of all. The second side of this is to trust that, again, his suspension of judgment is because he didn't know what this behavior was. So he had to work on himself to submit, to not immediately act, but to see what's going on, and to accept it. But the second thing that he did was that he followed him all the way to where he went. Why? Because when a person goes off the way, he is drawn to the places that are related to his soul. So he looks for it somewhere else. He needs to find it somewhere. So you have to follow him. You have to know where he's going. You can't just say, okay, so I've given up, or either do this or that. You have to take enough interest. If people don't know this, but you have to take enough interest to go where they go. So it's like there's a famous story about Rabben Zion Grossman, what's his name, from Migdal Emek.
Yeah.
That no, this is about him, I think. The third one.
I don't remember.
So the story is that when he was very, very young, probably in his 30s or 40s, he went to Tel Aviv. He was hosted for Shabbos, and he said, "I want to go see where all the young people are. Why aren't they here? Because I have something to tell them. Why? So they said, well, they're in a discotheque. That's what there was in the 70s, right? Thank God that's over now. At least that, now it's clubs, but at least disco is over. That's the good part. So they took him on Friday night. They took him to a disco, and he walked in. And he said, I have to see where they are. I have to understand what are they looking for, what's going on. So he sat there, and he said that he talked to people that were there for hours. And afterwards, everybody came home with him, and they continued the Shabbos where he was. But that's like the story of you have to go with him to the well. You have to go see, what is he doing? What does he see there? What does he get there? If you can understand what he sees there and what he gets there, you can take him out of there. But if you don't understand where he is, where his mindset is, you don't understand what kind of identity it's trying to forge, so you can't provide what he needs from the Torah, from Yiddishkeit. But the final stage of this is that this led to the revelation. Meaning, it says in the Midrash is trying to explain why did God choose Moses to take the people out of Egypt. It says this is a story, so you can very much imagine, and it's done in a lot of places. I've seen it put together, that when he ran after when he followed this kid, that's when he found the mountain. Meaning the whole revelation was because he took interest in this kid. Meaning that this is it's a stepping stone for yourself. You can't take it as just some kind of failure. It's not a failure. Like when a person has a child that goes off the derech in some way, it's not a failure. It's not good, but it's not a failure. It's a stepping stone for something higher. It's iridat tzolech aliyah, as we say in Chassidut. It's a descent for the sake of an ascent, even for the parents. And we see that many times, somebody once told me this, that the Rebbe was like a person standing in front of this ocean and saying the tide's not going to come in. He stopped the tide. What was the tide? The tide of history was that in every generation, the children are less observant than the parents. That was the tide of history until the Rebbe. And then the Rebbe switched it. And he made it so that the children are more observant than the parents. And that became the tide. It was like a person standing at the ocean saying, tide's not going to come in, it's going to go that way. And he switched the whole direction. Obviously, you can't do it single-handedly. He can only inspire. But in the end, it's all the shluchim, everybody who came afterwards, that was dedicated to this, they began to show that, look, how do you get to the parents? Well, first of all, you sign the kid up for Hebrew school, for Sunday school, whatever. And you keep going. And once the child has a bar mitzvah, so the parents become, the child puts on film and I don't, so maybe I need film too. And it continues that way until eventually what we see is the opposite, the reversed process, where the children become more observant and slowly they affect the parents. So that's on the exterior. But on the interior, the inner dimension of things is that the parent really is going down and coming up with the children. It was like Yaakov. The Yaakov went down, and Hashem said, if you go down with your children now, because Yaakov was an old man, he could have survived in Canaan, in the land of Israel. He didn't have any problems. But his children said, we can't make a living here. It's simply impossible. And Joseph, who we now understand was a prophet. So he interpreted the dream that we have 5 more years of famine. We're not going to survive, us and our children. And so they have to go down. So Yaakov says, I'll go down with them. Hashem says to him, go down with them. And because you'll go down with them, then I'll bring you up. And that's like a tremendous statement. That if you're willing to go down to where they are, when you come up, it's like Moshe here, you'll see a revelation of godliness. So these 3 explanations, that there is a submission, and then an identity, finding out what the identity that the child wants, and then descending with them to come back up for the sweetening. These are the 3 stages that the Ba'al Shem Tov always teaches. That there's submission, separation, and sweetening. Submission is, first of all, that I suspend judgment. This is erratic behavior, I don't know what it is, but I'm not going to scold him, I'm not going to stop him, let me see what happens. The second one is identity, is to go with them to where they are and find out what are they missing in their identity. The third stage is that even though you went down because of it, don't have no fear, because this will actually lead to a greater revelation of godliness in the parent's life. So this whole thing, it's true. Like we look at it from the outside, it looks like some kind of catastrophe. But in the end result will be that there will be a lot more sweetness from it than we can even imagine. And so that's a little thing on the beginning of today's reading. And then if you add to that what we said at the end of the davening, it's a very nice, very nice Torah portion. Identity. Submission, separation, sweetening. Separation is like identity, is finding the person's identity.
Submission,
separation, sweetening. In Hebrew, it's hachna'ah v'dala amtaka.
Beautiful.
So thank you for joining.